Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast series on a guide for first-time property buyers.
Hi everyone, my name is Simpiwe Shozi. I'm a partner, a conveyancer in the Notary Public at Shefton & Wiley Attorneys.
And I'm Snedlantle Nene, an associate and conveyancer also at Shefton & Wiley Attorneys. So we decided to do this podcast series as we realized there was a bit of a misconception of what actually goes into transferring a property. So unfortunately, it's not as easy as signing a sale agreement. So for this series, we will discuss the conveyancing process that goes into transferring your property.
All right, so our series will look at three things. Firstly, it's the overall conveyancing process, the costs involved in buying or selling your property, as well as the do's and don'ts that you can keep in mind when buying or selling your property.
So to kick off our episode, Simpiwe, could you briefly explain what goes into transferring the property?
Sure, you now have spent months or weeks looking for that property you want. So the first thing that will now happen is that the estate agent will then give you the offer to purchase, or if you're buying from the owner of the property directly, they will then give you the offer to purchase, which would include the description of the property, the parties themselves, as well as the purchase price of the property. And once that offer to purchase has been signed by both parties, it will then become a binding sale agreement.
So if you're purchasing property by means of a mortgage bond, this would be the best time for you to actually start applying for financing. We would suggest that you use a bond originator for this.
You might be asking yourself what a bond originator is. Basically, that is a person that will help you with your bond application process at the bank. They basically act as a middleman between you and the bank in the entire bond application process once you've signed the sale agreement.
So once the sale agreement has been signed, this would be the place where the conveyancers have been appointed by either by the seller or the estate agent. So Simpiwe, could you briefly explain what a conveyancer is?
Sure. A conveyancer is basically an admitted attorney that has written and passed their conveyancing exams and has been admitted as a conveyancer by the High Court of the Republic of South Africa. Basically, a conveyancer is the only person by law that is authorized to sign or prep any transfer or bond documents and to lodge and register those documents within the deeds office. But Sneh, is it possible for me as a purchaser to nominate my conveyancer?
If the seller agrees, then definitely you can. So you would just need to keep in mind that the conveyancer is there to act in the best interest of both the purchaser and the seller.
And once the conveyancer is appointed, what's the next step?
So then the conveyancing firm will open a file and then they will request FICA documents from you. So in terms of the FICA Act, we are required to verify all people that we do transactions with. So we will request your ID and your latest proof of residence. And
then once the transfer documents have been prepared by the conveyancing attorney, they will then call you to their offices to come and sign those documents. If you have taken a home loan through a bank, the bond attorneys will also call you to their offices to come and sign those bond documents as well.
So can these documents be signed electronically?
The bond documents, yes, they can be signed electronically. In fact, that's something the banks have recently introduced in moving with the times. However, when it comes to the transferring documents, or the transfer documents rather, those have to be signed physically within the conveyancing firm. But if you are not in the same city or town where your conveyancer is, what your conveyancer can do is appoint a correspondent attorney to sign you up wherever you live or wherever you're based. And then once the bond documents have been, transfer documents have been signed, and all suspensive conditions of the sale agreement have been met, the next step is that the conveyancer will now apply for the rates clearance certificate within the municipality where the property is situated.
Then it's also important to remember that no property will be transferred without the rates clearance certificate. So what a rates clearance certificate is, it's there to prove that any outstanding rates payable towards the property have actually been paid. So once the certificate has actually been issued, it will only be valid for 60 days.
And within that 60 days, the conveyancer will then have to lodge and register that matter within the deeds office, failing which then the rate certificate will lapse. Then the conveyancer will then have to reapply for the new rate certificate, which is something that might delay the conveyancing process if the matter is not lodged and registered within the 60 days.
And then what will happen once the rates clearance certificate has been issued?
So once the rate certificate has been issued and all transfer documents have been signed, the conveyancer has received the transfer duty receipt from SARS, and all finances of the sale have basically been paid by either the seller or the purchaser. The next step is that the conveyancer will now lodge the documents within the deed office where the property is situated.
So what happens once my documents have been lodged, and then how long will it take for it to actually be registered?
So once you have lodged your documents at the deeds office, the examiners at the deeds office will then check the documents to see if they've been drafted correctly. They will basically check if the names are correct, the property description is correct, and so forth. And once they have checked everything and they're happy with everything, they will then pass or approve your transfer documents for registration. And that's when you will get an email from your conveyancer telling you that your matter has now come up for fees or is now at prep section.
So you should be really happy when you get this email, because it means your documents have passed the examination stage of the examination. And once this happens, it means that your property will be registered in your name the next day, well, provided that the conveyancers have a proceed from all the parties involved.
And then how will I know then that my matter has been lodged and registered within the deeds office?
Well, conveyancers are meant to keep you updated during every step of the process. So they will advise you once the rates clearance has been issued, also when it's been lodged and registered. And even when the matter's been queried, they should keep you updated on this.
And then another thing to keep in mind, once the matter has been registered, the deeds office can take up to a month for them to release the title deed back to you or back to the conveyancers. And if you've bought your property through cash, then your conveyancer will call you to come and collect your title deed. But if you've bought the property through a mortgage bond, then the title deed will then be forwarded to the bank as security for the bank itself.
So if your documents have no queries and it's been registered, it means you are the new owner of the property, and the deeds office will update their records and they will release a new title deed reflecting the purchaser as the new owner. So then when can I expect to move into my property?
That's a good question, Sneh. Well, it depends on the sale agreement. But basically, it usually on the day of registration itself or a few days thereafter. But if for some reason you as a purchaser, you need to take early occupation of the property, that's fine. That's something that you can arrange with the estate agent. And then, but what you must keep in mind is that you can be expected to pay occupational rental of the property. But once registration has taken place, your estate agent will communicate with you in terms of when you can move into the property, as well as the handing over of the keys for the property once registration has taken place.
Okay, so now that we've covered the process of registering your property, what can we expect in our next episode?
So in our next episode, we'll look at the costs involved in buying or selling your property.